Hi, Ozzy here. Yesterday afternoon, I heard an audio podcast by the author and prominent atheist Sam Harris, which reflected my own mind very well on certain matters. In that podcast, Harris discusses the recent tragic triple murder in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, of 3 young Muslims at the hands of a man who self-identifies as an anti-theist. Harris, in that podcast, talks about why he thinks comparing this heinous murder to religiously motivated violence is a false equivalence, a kind of moral hoax, and how many people sympathetic to religion have been hungering for such an act to point to as an analogous case of atheistically motivated violence. He also discusses the problem of moral obfuscation on behalf of revealed religions by apologists, both religious and non-religious, who seek to deny the logical connection between bad, irrational ideas and the damaging actions that they inspire, and that they accomplish this by branding as hate mongers and bigots those who would speak frankly about the connection between pernicious doctrines and dangerous acts. I judged Harris's thoughts on these matters to be sober and important and in need of being heard. So in order to do my little part to help broadcast his thoughts, I made that podcast into a video. That video, which you can view on my channel, I'll include a link below, generated a number of thoughtful comments and criticisms. But there was one comment in particular which I thought was especially relevant, well stated, and deserved to be addressed in a short video of its own, because it's a sentiment I've heard expressed many times before, and which I think levels a false accusation against Sam Harris, and it's a criticism which has been leveled at me before. So here's the comment. I'm just going to read it. Quote, "I don't think Sam Harris has adequately represented the purpose of the backlash here." That's the backlash against Sam Harris. "It is a popular idea forwarded by Sam Harris in his book, The End of Faith, that moderate religious beliefs are not free of blame because they facilitate the cherishing of ideas that certain fantastic propositions can be believed without evidence, which then grants extremists fertile grounding for their extreme principles while simultaneously providing them cover under which to thrive." The backlash against Harris is not to blame Harris for forwarding a dangerous ideology. He's merely given the same criticism as he gave to the moderates of other positions, namely that he, that is Sam Harris, facilitated the idea that religious belief is, in and of itself, dangerous. And despite the fact that Harris himself is a moderate in terms of approach, he facilitates the potential militancy of those individuals who would seek to eradicate religiosity through violence for the same reasons. End quote. So to summarize, Harris is getting a taste of his own medicine. Harris has for years now accused religious moderates of providing cover, legitimacy, and facilitating the ideas and actions of religious extremists. And he is now himself being charged with doing the same thing, providing, as a moderate atheist, cover for atheistic extremists, and so facilitating their extreme actions. And here is my response to this allegation. First, it's incorrect to charge that Harris facilitated the idea that religious belief is, in and of itself, dangerous. That is not his view at all. In fact, in The End of Faith, and in many of his lectures and debates, he's been careful to say that it is the specific content or doctrines within the faiths which people hold that is relevant to whether they are apt to be dangerous, not merely that they're religious or have incorrect or irrational beliefs. In fact, he maintains, as I would, that some religions, despite being highly irrational and ungrounded in evidence, some of them actually leave one less disposed to violence than even the most clear-thinking and rational person. He has cited the example of certain Amish sects and the Jains. For instance, he said that Jainism is truly a religion of peace, repudiating all violence, even the killing of an insect. Some of them are at pains, he says, to get by in the world because of this. And he goes on to say that the more deranged a Jain becomes by his or her Jainism, the more fundamentalist he or she becomes, the less we have to worry about violence from such a person. So Harris does not take the view that is being alleged in the comment I just quoted, but quite the opposite. It nevertheless remains true, though, that Many of the world's religions do call for violence, and so people who hold to those dogmas and justify them on faith-based reasoning are very worrisome indeed. But Harris is clear that it is specific beliefs and doctrines that matter. Belief in bad ideas, not mere religiosity or faith-based justifications, which pose the problem of danger and threat. Additionally, it is not Harris's view, nor mine for that matter, that the mere existence of religious moderates, their mere presence in the world, provides cover, but rather that many religious moderates advocate for faith as a worthy value, thus preserving and perpetuating the discourse of faith, and that this often comes in the form of denying religiously motivated violence in cases where religious beliefs are clearly the motive and flatly stated by the perpetrators to be their motives. So it's not the mere existence of religious moderates that provides cover, but that moderates provide cover inadvertently or deliberately whenever they deny the causal connection between beliefs and the harm that certain beliefs predictably inspire. And if someone still thinks that there's a legitimate analogy here between religious moderates providing cover, as I just described, and what Sam Harris's work recommends, consider this. Harris is saying that some religious ideas inspire heinous acts, and the connection between certain doctrines, often expressed in literature that's held to be sacred, and the heinous acts is causal and logical. If a text or doctrine calls for the death of apostates, for instance, it's rather clear how someone sincerely embracing such a doctrine might bring about the death of an apostate. Sam Harris's recommendation is that we should criticize bad ideas and strive through conversational pressure to disabuse people of bad ideas and thus free us from the grip of such bad ideas. Where is the logical and causal connection between that which Sam Harris recommends, and an atheist who murders 3 young Muslims? Which dangerous ideas is Sam Harris recommending exactly? Which dangerous ideas is he making excuses for? I defy you to find one. Religious moderates, however, commonly seek to deny the bad ideas clearly expressed in their sacred literature and embedded in their doctrines. And when some extremist does act in accordance with some dogma, moderates will often suggest that the doctrines cannot possibly be a relevant part of the causal story or be sufficient motivation. They will cast about for any other possible explanation, from social injustices to political persecution to poverty to individual madness in the individual. Anything but what the perpetrator's religious beliefs are. Furthermore, I fail to see where Sam Harris, as outspoken as he is, has ever said anything that would deny that anti-religious bigotries result in the mistreatment or harm to the religious. He wouldn't and doesn't deny that. Nor am I aware of any such bigotries uttered by him or defended by him when uttered by others. But most important of all, Harris has said on numerous occasions, including in that podcast that I was just talking about, that he does not blame religions or the religious for wrongful acts committed by the religious, but only condemns those acts where they can clearly be shown to have been motivated by bad religious ideas. If anything, Harris is the figure within the new atheist movement who has been the most vocal and the most clear and the most insistent that we distinguish between wrongful acts which happen to be committed by people who have irrational beliefs and wrongful acts committed by people because of the specific irrational doctrines which those people believe in. Nowhere does he claim that all religious people are dangerous, nor even that all religious ideas are dangerous. Many anti-religious bigots will, of course, ignore this often repeated distinction that he draws. But I don't see how one can legitimately accuse Harris of providing cover for anti-religious bigots when they espouse their bigotries in the very teeth of his condemnations, and which he nowhere makes excuses for, and especially when he has taken pains to make clear the distinction between acts committed by the religious and acts committed by the religious because of what they believe. Okay, that's all for now, and thank you for watching.